Hello everyone, Pineaaronapple here with the 2020 film Boss Level, directed by Joe Carnahan and starring Frank Grillo as the lead. I'm sure Frank Grillo has many great film credits, but many general audiences will know him best as Brock Rumlow or Crossbones from many of the MCU films. Boss Level is an action sci-fi Hulu original movie. Hulu being a streaming service I've only heard of here and haven't seen since. It seems to take heavy influence from both video games in terms of style and story structure, and involves a sprinkle of Groundhog Day with its level restart idea. Unfortunately, I've heard almost nothing about this movie from anyone else, and only happened to come across it while my mother perused through a totally legal and legitimate, not at all morally bankrupt movie website out of sheer luck. I expect this because of the movie status as a Hulu original, which means about as much as a Paramount Plus original. And unless you watch iCarly, I doubt you knew Paramount Plus was a thing. This movie is about Frank Grillo's character, Roy, who after a disastrous removal from his wife, wakes up every day to the same onslaught of gimmicked hired killers waiting to kill him. Well, what else would they do? And it's Roy's job to figure out not only what caused the Groundhog Day, but who sent these killers to stand between him and his wife, who cryptically teased something would happen. With the base rundown of the story out of the way, let's talk about the characters. First is our protagonist, the main badass Roy, a retired member of Delta Force. Frank Grillo's performance is pretty good for the most part, from nihilistic to cheeky badass, but I must say that sometimes Roy's a little dull, usually within a couple of the emotional scenes. This isn't all emotional scenes, mind you, but sometimes either the dialogue wasn't good enough or the scene wasn't set well enough to allow the emotion to come through. Roy is quite endearing as a main character, after his depressing start and the lead into him kicking ass. And the scenes with Gemma and his son really help to give him more depth than just the action hero. Our villain for the piece is the Colonel, played by Mel Gibson. And I'm sure Mel Gibson needs no introduction. He isn't the main focus of the antagonistic force, that usually going to the hired assassins, but even if he lays into the cigars a little too hard, he does strike as an intimidating force to be reckoned with. Not only is he physically strong, but his demeanour and resources also show him as formidable. His physical strength is displayed well in a great fight scene, and shows both his strength and military prowess. Our protagonist's love interest and estranged wife Gemma is played by Naomi Watts. She gives a decent enough performance, but until the final scene she has almost nothing of note to do, other than serve as Roy's endgame or happily ever after. When she does see Roy, she does work well off of him. But the fact that she has nothing to do with her son in this movie has a detrimental effect to her character, as other than her relationship with Roy, she has no large stake in the story. Our hired killers are all strange characters, but are quite fun, each with their own gimmick, only two falling mostly flat. They are Guan Yin and She Has Done This.
I am Guan Yin, and Guan Yin has done this.
Pam, who sports Adolf Hitler's pistol. Mr. Good Morning, who is the first to try and kill Roy every turn. Roy 2, who just so happens to look like Roy. The German twins, who are twins and German. Kaboom, the dwarf explosive expert. And the other less remarkable ones that I honestly only remember the faces of, and nothing intriguing about them. Also working for the Colonel is Brett, played by Will Sasso, who I recognise from How I Met Your Mother, Mum, and the Doctor Who 1996 TV movie of all things. He serves his purpose well, starting as the intimidating sidekick of the Colonel, but does have many comedic moments, which is what he is more known for. Roy and Gemma's son also makes an appearance. He is used as a good point for Roy to be more emotional, even if not all of their scenes land as intended. The boy is actually played by Frank Grillo's son, but he can be a little dull sometimes. He is no Macaulay Culkin as a child actor. but he works well enough as a plot device. We also have some great memorable side characters in the diner, including my man Ken Jeong as Chef Jake, and Sean McKinney as Dave the surveillance expert. I'm going to give a quick rundown of the plot, so spoiler warning if you want to go into this movie not knowing the ending. After getting cryptic messages from his estranged wife, Roy wakes up in a Groundhog Day loop with many varied assassins after his head. After many rounds, he memorizes their movements to a T and can't seem to make it past a certain time. We're also introduced to the Colonel, who makes thinly veiled threats towards Gemma, while Brett tries to think a little too hard. After remembering the night before the loop, Roy finds a book with messages about his current situation and finds his son in one sketchy-ass place. So Roy, being Roy, not Dad, decides to spend this loop with his son, and doing so he realises that he's lived longer than ever before. So he theorises they must be tracking him, since the only thing different about this loop is he went underground, where they mustn't have been able to track him. This loop he dies protecting his son, with a new sense of purpose instead of his nihilism. Roy gets to the diner and chats up the surveillance expert, and they find out they're tracking him through his teeth, that he promptly rips out. Now, with this one-up on his foes, he first goes after the ginger affectionately named Pam. I love that these weirdos aren't given proper names for the most part. We just see some creative nicknames from Roy's view. After some Hitler talk, Roy promptly shoots her and takes revenge on the other crazies one by one. Roy learns of the bad guy's base and spends a couple loops finding his way through security, eventually coming face to face with this annoying sword user who promptly runs him through with a fun reference to Raiders. Remembering after many deaths and an intimidating meeting with the Colonel that there just so happened to be a master swordswoman at the diner that day, Roy seeks her out through many loops, trains with her to learn sword play. He also learns that his loop was created by the Osiris spindle that only Gemma knew could work. Once learning enough of the sword to hold his own, he makes a fool of Guan Yin,
Motherfucker.
and runs her through with a fun callback. Brett storms in with an apparently useless pistol and dies in a hilarious fashion.
Brett? I smell muffins. Do you smell muffins? Ah! Listen, walk it off. Now I'm blind.
Roy and the Colonel have a decent fight and standoff. Well, kneel off, with a great speech. Though he learns that if he confronts everyone like this, his family dies and the world ends. After a pretty depressing round of nihilism, he decides to spend time with his son in many loops before the end of the world that now comes around if he doesn't die. But thanks to his son's phone, Roy learns that once he wakes up, he still has time to save his family by killing the Colonel as fast as possible. Speedrunning the game, if you will. After a couple attempts, he storms the base before her death, knocking off all his opposition in fabulous ways, saving Gemma. Now comes the bit that leaves me a little unsatisfied. The ending. As you would know by my review of the first season of Code Geass, for me an ending can make or break an experience. And though this ending isn't bad, I feel it wraps up a little too negatively. The bad guys are defeated, and after some soul-searching and a decent dialogue between Roy and Gemma, if the world isn't going to end, Roy needs to enter the spindle, and he most likely won't be coming back. I feel like this doesn't do the story between Roy and his son any justice, though. He may have been able to spend time with his son and learn to take more than what he can give to atone for his absence, but his son doesn't know anything about that, and didn't really even get to spend this final day with his dad since his mum gets killed before that can even be possible. So Roy's uncertain destiny may be a good bookend to his character arc, but leaves me dissatisfied with the way the world around him ends. Also, just a personal gripe for me, I don't particularly like ambiguous endings when you can't draw on information to justify what happens after yourself. There's a big difference between complete ambiguity and inferred continuation. This film is pretty well shot. Even with the abundance of action scenes, it always felt like the camera movements were well thought out, and I can remember no noticeable shaky cam that action scenes and car chases can be synonymous with. The choreography of each fight is also very well done. No Last Jedi bullshit here. And the attention to detail, to liken this to a video game, may feel like it gets forgotten every now and then, but when they do attempt that iconography and reference, it mostly works. There seem to be many tracks on the soundtrack, but to be honest, I have absolutely nothing to say on the topic. Pretty forgettable. Overall, this movie has interesting and entertainingly varied characters, with a decent script and a lovely video game restart aesthetic. Its positives far outweigh the flaws, but in the scenes where the emotional comedy don't land, as rare as they are, they stick out like a sword in the head. I give the 2021 movie Boss Level a 7 out of 10.
Toast. A little piece of toast. Because there's so much to choose from. There's brown bread, white bread, all sorts of wholemeal bread. It comes in funny packages with writing on the side.